The end may be near for Arsenal and Liverpool in the title race. Maybe, as both relinquished control to Manchester City at the weekend. You don't want to do that at this stage of a season, of course. City have got a lot of games potentially still to play. Nevertheless, former Villa striker Gabby Agbonlahor has been in touch with a message for Gooners after yesterday's hammer blow.
All I could say to Arsenal fans is North London forever. Whatever the weather, these streets are our own. Aston Villa, post, crossbar and post, 2 amazing goals. Arsenal, bottle jobs. They do it every season. The title is Manchester City's, and top 4 will be Arsenal's. Have a great week, my friends.
Well, that is the sublime to ridiculous, isn't it? Sinatra to Agbonlahor. Gabby with a voice like that.
Yes.
I would not be singing at all.
He sounds like one of those ones that's just turned up for an audition on the X Factor. You know the one when Simon Cowell pulls the face when someone starts singing and realise he can't sing a note. Gab's got that sort of voice, hasn't he?
Yeah. By the way, Andy, I am not having it at the moment. I knew the papers in particular and Gabby would be all over it. Arsenal bottle jobs. Arsenal were brilliant for 45 minutes yesterday. The problem was that in the second 45 minutes, they came up against a side who were fantastically, tactically organised by Unai Emery. And by the way, isn't it ironic if Arsenal don't win the title that it's Unai Emery who's done it? Unai Emery, who was demeaned and belittled for his lack of a grip on the English language while he was at Arsenal. He hasn't got a lack of a grip on tactics, has he? No. He speaks that language bloomin' brilliantly.
He does.
But I don't think Arsenal have bottled it. I think, they're chasing a fabulous team in Manchester City. They played really well for a long time yesterday. Had it not been from that Martinez save in the first half, could have been a very different story.
Could have been a very different story.
So let's leave bottle out of this, I think.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. Look, they are still, I think, travelling in the right direction. Arsenal to lose against Villa in a game like that, as you say, is no shame, and because Villa played particularly well, and it's not done yet. It's still 6 to go, and look, we knowing what we know about Manchester City and Pep and the way that they go about it, I think we'd all be very surprised if they don't end up as champions. However, with 6 matches to go at this point, the Arsenal camp still have to remain unbelievably positive. They got tons still to play for.
And if you add to those 6 matches, City might have 4 games left in the Champions League and 2 games left in the FA Cup. 12 matches. A lot of football there. Just a quick word before we move on. Morning chap, says Darren. Palace were brilliant yesterday at Anfield. Yeah, we had to suck up a bit of pressure towards the end. Slight understatement, Darren. We knew we would have to do that, but we could have been out of sight. Correct. We had one off the line in the first half, and of course there was that sensational save from Alisson in the second half. I think a little bit of credit where it's due. It wasn't all about Liverpool. You are absolutely spot on, Darren. Palace produced a tremendous performance, and it wasn't just all about desperate defence. Well, it was for a lot of the second half. But the first half, going forward offensively, they were brilliant. And Mateta, well, I tell you what, Ibrahim Konate just could not handle him at all. Anyway.
What about that amazing clearance from Andy Robertson as well?
Yeah, I know.
Stunning. Incredible. That was the movement and the passing for the Palace goal, Jeff, was brilliant. Some brilliant one touch, get to the byline, little clip back, and a cool slot from Eze. Really good goal.
With that front 3, they look like they can score goals. Yeah.
A crazy Sunday of football, which of course dominates all of the back pages today. My favourite picture of all is this on the Times Games pull out. Nothing to do with Arsenal, nothing to do with Liverpool. It's just a picture of Pep Guardiola smoking a cigar, looking very relaxed. Pep's perfect weekend is the headline. You guys have touched on that game and both games yesterday. So just away from yesterday, a lot more fallout in the papers. I want to speak about Spurs. Went to Newcastle, lost 4-0. Postecoglou's lack of flexibility is a real worry, says talkSPORT's Tony Cascarino in the Times this morning. He says, I understand managers must have a clear plan A for how they want their team to play, but I don't agree with the idea that plan A should be stuck to at all times. You have to be adaptable. Ange Postecoglou has been praised all season for how a Spurs team play, but Newcastle had clearly done their homework. They ripped Spurs' high line to shreds. You have to recognise when your plan isn't working, and I can't believe he didn't think to drop the line a bit deeper. I feel he was too stubborn. We saw these issues earlier in the season when they went down to 9 men against Chelsea and were constantly exposed in behind. That is my biggest concern with Postecoglou. Yep. What do you reckon, Andy?
I think there's something in that, Sam. I do. Excuse me, guys. I do think there's something in that. In terms of, I mean, it was exposed on Match of the Day on Saturday night. Was it Martin doing it? I think Martin Keown might have been doing it, where he showed Romero and Mickey van der Ven, almost in Newcastle territory, holding that high line, which they have done all season. Eventually, if you've got a tactic like that, others are going to find ways to penetrate that. They're going to find ways to beat that. Isak was threatening that all the time. Anthony Gordon was threatening that all the time. They looked potentially like they could at any point break that down. And they did very successfully in the end. Newcastle, they were really, really good. Some lovely goals from them. But I know what Cass is saying. When something's not quite working, then it's is it your job as a coach to say to players, no, we're going to stick with what we do. This is what we do. We're not going to change one jot from what was working so well for us a few months ago. Or do you tweak it? Or do you move it around a bit?
And there's that's the phrase. What was working a few months ago? Since December the 15th, away from home, they've won once, and in that time they conceded 4 at Brighton, 2 at Manchester United, 2 at Everton, 3 at Fulham, 4 at Newcastle. Anybody can see it is not working at the moment. It doesn't mean to say that Postecoglou hasn't done a decent job there. It was a bit premature naming him London Manager of the Season, wasn't it? About August or something like that.
After 3 games they gave it to him, didn't they?
But credit to Newcastle, because Eddie Howe, by contrast, he's been under pressure, it seems, all season long. And look where they're sitting now. They're 5th and 6th. And one last thought. Anthony Gordon, he has to go to the Euros. Got to go to the Euros.
Dangerous at the minute. He is really, really good, yeah.
So that was the early game, Newcastle beating Spurs. In the late game on Saturday, a great game, Bournemouth 2, Manchester United 2. But again, Erik ten Hag has got some off-field issues to deal with. I'll read this from the Mirror this morning. Graham Thomas says, after Jadon Sancho's banishment, Erik ten Hag is risking another fallout with a major talent over their trigger-happy fingers on social media. Alejandro Garnacho liked posts on X claiming ten Hag had thrown him under the bus by taking him off at half-time against Bournemouth. Ten Hag subbed Garnacho at the break and referenced the need not to be erratic in possession. Garnacho gave the ball away in the build-up to Bournemouth's opener. Do you have sympathy here once again with Erik ten Hag? Or I saw some people say on social media that there's been so many incidents of players misbehaving. Can some of it be down to maybe the manager and his man management? Where do you stand, Andy?
Listen, a manager reserves the right at any point to if he feels like he has to criticise. And it doesn't always work. It's not. Lots of people nowadays think it's such a crime to criticise a player publicly in some sort of manner that you can't do that you're not allowed to do that. I again come from a very different era, so I don't think it's such a bad thing now and again for any young player to be on the receiving end when they haven't performed or when they haven't done it. So I would say to my advice, if I was a skipper in that dressing room, if I was Bruno, I'd be saying to Garnacho, listen, forget your social media replies, forget that. Head down this week. You need to get your head down and get back to doing what you've been brilliant at for parts of this season. But stop chipping away at him, because he's right under pressure at the moment, Ten Hag, and lots of people now, lots of the United fans have probably made up their minds. They'd rather see him out the door. It doesn't help when players start chipping away on social media. I think it's unnecessary. The
only thing I would say was Garnacho's been one of their best players all season.
He has been,
long.
Jeff.
He's going to lose the ball from time to time because he takes people on. He's brave enough to take people on. And on that day against Bournemouth, Ten Hag could have taken any one of 9 outfield players off. Of course, they were hopeless. There was only Bruno Fernandes was the only man who kept them in the game. It was absolutely brilliant. One last thing, though, because we're talking about the media. Ten Hag did not storm out of the press conference at the end. It was disgraceful misreporting, to be brutally honest. He was about to leave. He was getting out of his seat when he was asked another question. The press conference was coming to the end. There was no storming out by Ten Hag, whatever you think of him.
Well said. I've seen, and there's a video as well, Jeff, on social media that proves that as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam.